All right, everybody, what's happening? Hope you're having the best Wednesday ever. I'm chilling at home today. I've actually been working from home on Wednesdays as opposed to being in the studio for a couple of weeks now. And as you know, it's Wednesday. We're going live in the tribe. I think I got to get a better camera. I'm running my camera off my laptop, and I think I need to get a better one. Just be like, yo, get a better camera, Tom, if you agree. So, anyways, if you're watching this live, comment live, and if you're checking the replay, comment replay. This is Wednesday's Q&A from Tom the Trainer's Tribe. And if you're listening to it in the podcast after the fact, then join Tom the Trainer's Tribe. Link is in the description to join. It is the best space in the industry. As far as I'm concerned, it is the number one space in the industry that provides like a no BS atmosphere. And lately, the tribe has absolutely been hopping. People are sharing accountability photos in there. The community in there is great. We don't put up with any BS, and anybody that brings any BS is kicked out of the tribe because we protect the vibe in the tribe. So whether you're listening to this on the podcast, over on LinkedIn, YouTube, my personal Facebook page, wherever it may be, if you want to be part of a kick-ass vibe in the tribe, come join, and you can also ask your questions on Wednesdays yourself. Now, if you're watching this over on Instagram, check the link in the description. Pardon me, the link in my bio to join Tom the Trainer's Tribe. But again, I want to put that out there. It's for good kick ass people only. So if you're not a good kick ass person, don't join the tribe. But otherwise, we'd be happy to have you here. So I was a little bit prepared today, and I've got the questions up and ready. I'm not having to search for them. So again, let's just really get right into it. So I'm going to go in sequence. I actually have some questions saved from last week's Live in the Tribe. So I'm going to cover those first because last week's Live in the Tribe was extremely interactive and I wasn't able to answer everybody's questions. And I want to make sure that we get to those as well for everybody. And question I have from my man Logan. What's up, Logan? Um, I'm gonna try to tag you in this right now. Question from my man Logan is about cardio and weights versus just weights. Can you like lose fat without cardio? How important is cardio? So that's a phenomenal question, Logan. And I would say that yes, you absolutely can lose fat without cardio. In fact, I often don't introduce cardio myself until I'm fairly deep into the cutting process, like for photo shoots and stuff, at least most recently. I've found that I really like to leverage my step count and just overall activity as much as I possibly can before I worry too much about actual designated cardio. So, yeah, you can absolutely lose and get lean without actual cardio. I do think it's important, however, to like try to keep your cardiovascular health good. So I do think it is an important card to play at some point in time. I know of like very successful bodybuilders who have gotten on stage absolutely shredded without doing a lick of cardio, of actual designated cardio, and they just focused on like 18,000 steps per day. And they got like bodybuilder on stage shredded from it. Personally, I still think you should do cardio for the cardiovascular health benefits, but you can absolutely get lean without it, right? Overall, and the cool thing about leveraging your step count for your activity expenditure, for your calorie expenditure through activity levels is that it's got like a really low fatigue. It's got a really low fatigue on the body because of the fact that there's not a lot of stress created from walking per se, right? So, um, Next question I have here is from Katie, and she's just wondering how much protein she should eat, and then also wondering how the heck does anyone consume large amounts of protein? Okay. So when it comes to your protein intake, Katie, I would personally say that it's dependent on your goals, right? So for most people, I would say like zero point 0.8 grams per pound of body weight is ample protein for most people. Um, especially when you're trying to lose body fat. Because when you're trying to lose body fat, you're dealing with like a lower caloric intake. And I don't believe that you should be too high on protein when you're trying to lose body fat. Um, and that you should leave some calories available that would be taken up by having too high of a protein content for your fats and your carbohydrates. So I quite often will set up a client on like 0.75, 0.8 grams of protein per pound. Um, quite often. Now it's all dependent on like how much body fat you have, your overall size and those kinds of things. Because, we're dealing with variances with people, right? Um, say for example, a very obese individual might only need like zero point 0.5 grams of protein per pound, right? So another way to look at it as well is like maybe 1 gram per pound of lean body mass would be all right. Um, but you can't go wrong with zero point 0.8 for the majority of people. Okay. There are times when you can get higher with your protein intake. So like for me personally, um, when I'm bulking, my protein intake will exceed that of zero point 0.8. And more often than not, my protein intake does exceed that of zero point 0.8. But you also have to kind of consider the fact that I personally carry a lot of muscle. I have a lot of lean body mass. So it's higher than zero point 0.8, but it's probably closer to the 1 gram per pound of lean body mass based upon the amount of muscle mass that I have on me, right? So you can't go wrong with zero point 0.8 for most. And then, of course, like for most people, and then you can adjust from there, right? And I know with your question, Katie, about like how the heck does somebody consume that much protein? Um, it's easier than you think, to be honest with you, right? Um, like a chicken breast, for example, the average chicken breast is probably 30 grams of protein, right? Um, 3 eggs is like 21 grams of protein, right? Um, and then, you know, the easiest way to do it then would be to think of like, am I prioritizing a protein source at every single meal? Okay. Am I prioritizing whole food protein source at every single meal? Okay. And a really easy way to do it as well, like even without weighing it, Katie, would be like, is your protein source like the size of your fist? And are you eating, say, like at least 4 to 5 meals per day with a protein source roughly the size of your fist? You're going to eat that much protein quite easily. Quite easily. It's so much easier than people think it is as long as you prioritize it. And if you're prioritizing protein through whole foods, like you probably don't need to substitute all that much protein through supplements like shakes and bars. There's a time and place for it all. But like I at times can have my protein intake over 200 grams per day quite easily. So it's just a matter of prioritizing it, really. And then also, it's all relative to the size of the individual, right? And therefore, like the size of you as an individual is going to be relative to your appetite, right? So a 120-pound woman only needs to eat, say, 100 grams of protein. You know, it's relative to her appetite versus a 200-pound man who needs to eat, say, 190 or 180, if that makes sense, right? So prioritize protein at every single meal. Eat 4 to 5 meals per day, and you will knock your protein intake out of the park, and then have your protein intake like, look at it this way, as a woman, try to get 20 grams of protein at 5 meals per day, at least 20 grams of protein at 5 of your meals per day. That's 100 grams, right? And then you could even maybe use a shake or something like that to substitute the rest. But honestly, some of your protein selections are going to be more than 20 grams. So that's another way to look at it. Is it just like even out how many meals you're going to have throughout the day? And then look at that and say, like, I'm having 4 meals per day and I need 120 grams of protein. That's 30 grams per meal. Easy peasy, right? I'm gonna have 4 eggs, is 28 grams of protein for breakfast, right? That kind of stuff. It's just really all about prioritizing it. Mark Stevenson is asking, "What's happening, Mark? I'm gonna tag you, man, to make sure that you get the answer to this." Mark Stevenson is asking, um, how to develop the bicep peak. Um, because he says, he's noticed some of my variations in the exercises I've posted on my social media, but his arms have gotten stronger. Um, but the peak of his bicep isn't developing in his view. And wants to know how to get that height on the bicep. Okay. So the easiest way to do that is, in my opinion, is to look at fully contracting the bicep. And when you're fully contracting the bicep, you have to think about um protracting at the shoulder. Okay. So when you want to when you want to fully contract the bicep and hit the peak of the bicep, you have to think the opposite of shoulder blades back and down. You need to think shoulder forward and reach with the arm while curling on the weight. Okay. I did a post recently on my Instagram, how to fully contract your bicep using a bench. But like the other thing that I would say, the movement that most people are like really familiar with would be a concentration curl. But when you're doing a concentration curl, you have to consider you're not just sitting there resting your elbow on your knee. You have to reach with your arm. Okay. There's a muscle under your armpit that's called your serratus, and it's the boxer's muscle. And you see boxers have it because they have that snap in their jab, right? That snap in their punch where their shoulders elevate and their upper back around their shoulder like rounds a little bit. You need to fire that muscle to get a full contraction on your bicep. And that's how you'll develop the peak of your bicep, is getting it to fully contract. Okay. So, in my opinion, it has nothing to do with the moment arm, the distance that's created from the bicep to the weight based upon your setup, as it does have to do with how you're organizing your anatomy. And I hope that makes sense the way that I've explained it, because it's kind of like a technical execution of exercise. And I will say, Mark, I literally just posted about it just literally the other day, where I'm doing a bicep curl on a bench on my Instagram story, and I'm using the bench almost like a opposite setup to a preacher curl. And have a look at that. Okay. Um, okay. My man Steve wants to know, does sumo deadlift target the same muscles as conventional deadlifts, and is one better than the other? And that's a phenomenal question, bro. So the two of them, like conventional deadlifts and sumo deadlifts, do target similar muscles, their posterior chain. So the difference, well, and to educate maybe anyone listening, your posterior chain is everything on the backside of your body. So like your lats, your glutes, your hamstrings, right? Your shoulder stabilizers and stuff, everything on the backside of your body, the low back extensors, um, that's your that's your posterior chain. Both are worked in the deadlift, but because of the angle that's created on your spine, your sumo deadlift is going to create a little bit more challenge into your quads than it is going to challenge the hamstrings. And the hamstrings are going to pardon me, and the conventional deadlift is going to challenge more hamstring. Okay. Because when your torso is more upright and you're pushing through the floor, it is more quad to start the exercise. And the conventional deadlift is like, how can I explain this in a way that'll make sense to you? Uh, you're pushing through the floor to start a sumo deadlift and then pulling with your back. Okay. When you're starting a conventional deadlift, you're pulling with your back and then pushing through the floor. So the starting muscle on the conventional deadlift is going to be your hamstrings and glutes. The starting muscle that's biased with first initial contractile force is the quads in the sumo deadlift. Okay. Um, and I wouldn't say that one's better than the other. They're both phenomenal exercises. They just do different things, right? Um, Sumo deadlift is going to be better for somebody who has a weaker core because they have more of an upright torso. So they won't have as much difficulty managing and organizing their spine. A sumo deadlift is also going to be easier for somebody who's got like really long legs than a conventional deadlift because of the width that they create their stance is going to make the pull shorter on a sumo deadlift, right? Um, so they're both great muscles, or great movements. Pardon me. One's not better than the other. It's just that they do different things. Okay. Um, okay. So next up here. Okay. So next up here, we've got Damon is asking about sleep. And sleep, as we all know, is extremely important, right? So, um, how many hours of deep sleep do you recommend to be sufficient? If I get less than 4 hours of sleep, I feel like crap. I find my light sleep hours don't affect my energy as much as my deep sleep. And I have sleeping aids and medications to help me sleep. And I've tried melatonin, but it doesn't seem to be strong enough. Any suggestions? So Damon, bro, like, I mean, obviously, I can totally understand why you would say you feel like crap if you get less than 4 hours of deep sleep. Because, like, man, I think like anybody would. Like, sleep is so important for our energy levels, our mental cognition, our how we think, right? Our mental awareness. Being sleep deprived is really, really a brutal, brutal thing. So I can see how like getting less than 4 hours of sleep would make you feel horrible. Um, you gotta kinda prioritize it. I personally try my absolute best to get at least 7 hours of sleep, 7 hours of quality sleep every single night. The easiest thing that, like, I've done to be able to regulate that, like, full disclosure is I take a sleep aid because I struggled with sleeping, like, I was a little bit of, like, an insomniac, like, the majority of my life up until, like, my late 20s where I finally got a sleep aid, for it, and it's the right sleep aid, and it puts me out, and it allows for me to sleep well. Um, so, full disclosure, like I guess I've got a cheat code for my sleep, but it's a cheat code that was needed because like I'm just not somebody that could sleep well. Like growing up as an individual, I was somebody who would just lay in bed and not fall asleep and it would be like 4 o'clock in the morning, right? So I think, like, if it were me and I had medication from a doctor that wasn't working, I would talk to my doctor about finding the right medication that is working. Other things that you can personally do as well is, like, you can limit your screen time nice and, early in the evening. Like, definitely limit your phone screen time. I notice an absolute difference when I limit my screen time, and if I am gonna be on a screen later than I should be, I wear my blue blocker glasses, like these, like, goofy, like, Superman glasses that I look like, I'm wearing right now, like, I kinda look like Clark Kent, maybe. If you're watching this, say Clark Kent in the chat if you agree. So blue blocker glasses will help with that, and then I do my absolute best to go to bed and wake up every single day at the same time, and the more you can regulate your sleep cycle, the more likely you will be to be consistent on that sleep cycle. And that's the best advice that I can give you. And then the answer that I have to your question is like, yeah, absolutely 7 hours of quality sleep per day, in my opinion. There's times where we're going to do really, really good at that. And there's times where we're not going to do so great at it. I've had some things recently that have made it so that like I haven't got as much sleep as I'd like to, but I got some big things happening in the back end. I did an announcement post, like a teaser announcement post about it yesterday, and I won't give everybody the goods yet, but I've got some things I'm working on in the back end that have just made it that I have to work a little harder than and more hours, and my sleep has taken a little bit of a hit from it. But I'm still like when I say my sleep is taking a little bit of a hit from it, like it means like I might get like 6.5 hours sleep some nights instead of 7. And also the fact that like, you know, I'm training a new puppy has affected my sleep as well, right? But try to go to bed and wake up every single day at the same time. It's the most powerful thing you can do for regulating your sleep. Aaron says, one sec here. Uh, Aaron says, I've always struggled with the best rep, set, and weights for what exercise I'm doing. That's a really good question, Aaron. So I actually I did a podcast the other day. I think it's called the best rep ranges for a fat loss or the best rep ranges for a big transformation. Uh, Episode number 37, the best rep ranges for fat loss. I personally believe that there's nothing wrong with using all rep ranges and leveraging the different rep ranges at different times, dependent on obviously like the specific goals that you're trying to accomplish, but also the energy sources that are available through your diet and training combined. So say for example, in the beginning stages of a like weight loss period, like right now I just did a bulk, I'm full of glycogen. I've got tons of carbohydrates in my system. So if I did really high repetitions, I would be able to leverage those carbohydrates for energy and burn them off. And then as those got depleted, I would start to lift heavier. Now, there's like a comma to that in a sense of like there's certain exercises that you probably like really shouldn't be lifting overly heavy. Like I don't lift extremely heavy on like biceps and triceps, for example, right? I don't lift extremely heavy on lateral flies, for example. Um, if I lift really, really heavy on lateral flies, then I'm probably just not going to connect with the muscle anyways. So I don't understand the point, right? Then if I lift really, really heavy on like bicep curls or tricep extensions, I'm probably like, I shouldn't even say probably, like I'm 100% just going to trash my elbows, right? So when it comes to compound movements, you can literally use all rep ranges, as low as like 4 to 6s, I would even say, if you're looking for like compositional change in your body, for compound movements and those kinds of things. So multi-joint exercises, any rep range is fine. Um, when it comes to synovial joint exercises, which are things like ankle, knee, elbow, those kinds of things, you're I like to prefer high repetitions with those. and I never really get below 6s. And I personally, as like a man in my 40s, honestly, I personally avoid anything like under probably 8s when it comes to those um, muscle groups. And then same thing when it comes to shoulders, not because the shoulders extremely like okay, when I say shoulders is like a shoulder press and overhead press, you can probably do all rep ranges. But a lateral fly, for example, stick with a rep where you feel like you can connect on the muscle and work the muscle and not use momentum to move the weight. So I know that wasn't like a really direct answer, but I hope like you can take away like my thought process on those. And then when you're looking at an exercise, be like, does it make sense for me to lift heavy on this or should I lift lighter? Right. And especially with like biceps and stuff like that. Like I personally have grown my arms quite a bit in the last year. I haven't lifted heavy on biceps at all. I've just focused on contracting the muscle, uh, good quality reps, 8 to 15, sometimes even 20 reps on my biceps as an example. So also I'm trying to give you information and answers that you could take away and apply yourself is like if you're doing a bicep curl and you're like, pardon my French, you're like, this makes my elbows feel like shit, you're probably lifting too heavy, right? If your joints are hurting more than the muscle, you need to change the rep range. Um, and then when it comes to, you know, compound lifts, if you're executing them well, I think all rep ranges are good. Um, am I gonna get to Austin here? Has this been helpful so far, everybody? Just comment helpful if you're in the chat. Um, I'm just going to address a question here. So if you go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time, do you really need 7 hours? For example, I read an interview with Muscle and Fitness with Vince McMahon. He sleeps 4 hours a night and trains like a beast. Guess what I'm trying to say is as long as you're keeping a set schedule, does it really matter for your sleep? Yeah, 100%. Whether you, like it matters. The quality of sleep that you're getting absolutely matters. Personally, I don't want to like, I don't know. I have a hard time believing that I have a hard time believing that like Vince McMahon always only sleeps 4 hours per night, personally. And if he is, then like maybe he's an X-Man or something. And like maybe like mutants live among us. And I just if for me personally, like if I hear something and I'm like, I don't know if that makes sense. I wonder if there's some exaggeration behind it. And then I will also say like there are outliers. Like, I'm kidding around when I say maybe he's an X-Man and he's a mutant, but like there are outliers in the world, right? But outliers not included. Unless you're a mutant, get 7 hours of sleep for sure. For sure. Um, and I don't know. I don't want to say like somebody's not telling the truth or something like that, but I have a really hard time believing that that man at his age, built as he is, regardless of the things he's doing to be built like that at his age, because he shouldn't be built like that at his age, is also only sleeping 4 hours a night and probably hasn't died of a heart attack yet. Like, you know what I mean? Like, anyways. So, yeah, not to say what you're saying is wrong or anything like that. It's just like when I hear something like that, I know you're just passing on information that you've heard. When I hear information like that, it's kind of one of those things where I'm like, I have a hard time believing that. And if it is true, then he is absolutely an outlier mutant of an individual, right? Um, yeah. All right. So next up, thanks, Rob. Thanks, buddy. Rob says I'm bringing the fire on Wednesdays. Okay. So next up, what do we got here for questions? Um, Austin says, I'm curious on your take around cardio necessity and a fat loss. We just totally covered that. Coming from the powerlifting side, we generally see cardio simply as heart health. And just to overall boost your calorie expenditure by increasing the activity thermogenesis. But I've caught myself in some bodybuilding groups in the past with some people who legitimately compete, and they are adamant that cardio has fat loss benefits beyond just increased calorie expenditure when it comes to getting competition lean. I would say for this, Austin, like, obviously in the beginning of the live, I answered a similar question about this. So I know obviously you kind of have what I mentioned earlier when listening to this about like fat loss specifically and only fat loss. I could 100% see there being a benefit to I can 100% see a benefit to cardio beyond fat loss, and especially when you're looking at bodybuilding, right? So when you're looking at bodybuilding, then like more carbohydrates will make you feel fuller. Well, I shouldn't even say make you feel fuller. It'll make you look fuller. Okay. So if you can lose body fat by doing more carbohydrates, which in turn means that you're eating more carbohydrates because you're able to eat more because you're burning more calories through cardio, you will have a fuller, more muscular look. And that's something that I believe would be leveraged if you were looking at it as like in a bodybuilding, um, what's the word? Like in bodybuilding context, right? Does that make sense? So say for example, like my client Jay, he for a while was not eating very many carbs at all, and that was kind of like a choice in the route that he wanted to go with his nutrition. So I supported that. I was he's my bro too, right? So he found it's what worked for him, but it's not something that like I would ever personally do or rarely do with a client. I only did it with Jay because like he's my bro, and but also I'm a coach who's a feedback coach. Um anyways, he then introduced carbohydrates back into his diet after increasing cardio exponentially, and he had to increase carbohydrates when increasing cardio so much, and he looked as big and lean, as full as ever when he reintroduced cardio at high levels and then compensated for those high levels of cardio that was burning body fat by eating more carbohydrates, and he looked bigger, leaner, and fuller. So in a bodybuilding context, it can absolutely 100% give you a better look. Okay. So, um, and then obviously I know like I got into some more of the specifics of that earlier from Logan's question. Um, I hope that was helpful and made sense. Just let me know in the chat. Um, Carlos is asking about a specific routine to train abs, like an ab day. Um, I think abs are best trained, Carlos, at the end of every workout, personally. I think that they're a muscle. I believe certain muscles respond to different frequencies of training. And then you have to look at the muscle and kind of like understand like what is it that that muscle does per se, like what's its muscle function. And our abs are supporting our spine while we're upright and sitting. So like our abs are doing a lot of work constantly. And then therefore I believe that they should be given more frequent doses of training with less overall volume per training session. Also, like if you overdo abs, like by doing an ab day, in my opinion, and you're just crushed your abs, it sucks. Like every exercise hurts. Do you know what I mean? It's like I don't know if you've ever seen the meme where like I think it's Eddie Murphy. It's an Eddie Murphy meme, and it's like he's like pointing to his head, and he's like going like he's pointing to his head, and the meme says every exercise is a low back exercise if you do it wrong. Um, well, whether you're doing it wrong or not, every exercise involves your core. I should say this, if you're doing it right, every exercise involves your core. So to give a high volume training session on abs on a day rather than spreading out your ab training in little doses every single day, it will limit your lifting ability on subsequent workout sessions. So, ab exercises, I'm really a big fan on any exercise that doesn't actually curve the spine. So you don't want to extend your spine or flex your spine under load. So if you are going to extend or flex your spine, do it on machines like a glute ham raise machine where there's no compressive force on the spine, no gravitational force on the spine in axial loading, and then hanging leg raises and things like that. But otherwise it's like literally like I built my core with like planks, side planks, reverse planks, bird dogs with control, Copenhagen planks, stir the pots, and those kinds of exercises when it comes to abs. I think I think that's everything. I'm just gonna check some comments here. On the topic of repetitions, what would you say to someone who does not get joint pain at heavy low rep ranges, but does at lower weight controlled higher rep ranges? For example, shoulders get destroyed if I do chest exercises in the 8 to 12 range, even dumbbells, but at 4 to 6, it's fine, even at a higher RPE. Hmm. Um, it would come down to form. There's something there in your form. Um, in the execution at the different rep ranges. It would have to be. Um, like, and I guess like I'd have to really be specific in understanding like, is it actual joint pain? Or is it that you have more muscular pain from the higher repetitions because your body's not as accustomed to the higher repetitions because you're lifting heavier? And I guess like I'm not 100% sure. I'm gonna see if I can see who asked this question. Um, could also be that like it could also just be um sometimes, not to say that like this is always the case, but sometimes people approach um heavier weights differently than they approach lighter weights, right? So it could be that. I'm not 100% sure. I'd literally have to see your form to know, to be honest with you. Um, on my personal Facebook page, if you're watching on there, check the link in the description and join Tom the Trainer's Tribe. Same thing on IG, LinkedIn, YouTube, everywhere. Come join Tom the Trainer's Tribe if you want to see the rest of the training, okay? Um, cool. So, oh no, I saw somebody's comment and I already clicked end on Instagram. My bad. Um, let me just double check and see if there's any other questions. I think we're good here, everybody. So appreciate everybody for being on here. I appreciate you for listening to. I appreciate everybody for being on here, and I appreciate everybody for asking the questions that provide the answers to yourself because you're taking your fitness goals seriously. Clearly, if you're asking questions, you're seeking help, and that's something to be like something that's like commendable. And then also you asking questions is helping others because the people in the tribe are benefiting from your questions, and then also the people listening on the podcast who may not yet be members are benefiting from the questions. So I want to say everybody who asked questions, I appreciate you for doing so, and it's commendable that you are getting after it and taking your fitness goals seriously. So that's it. If you want some one-to-one coaching help, I do have a couple of spots left open this month for this promotion before March hits. Shoot me a message that says coaching. You can send me that on my Instagram at Tom the Trainer Fitness, or if you're watching this on any other platform, you can send me that as well on that platform. So have the best day ever, and thanks so much for tuning in. Take care.